Today we are going to be ranking the 6 Sentry Stratagems, that's a tongue twister, 6 Sentry Stratagems in order of their effectiveness in the early game. Particularly difficulties 1 through 4 when you're not encountering too many armored enemies or bile titans or anything crazy like tanks. Now all of these sentries have their own pros and cons. You know, depending on the situation, is depending on how you would rank them, which is why we're ranking these specifically for the early game difficulties, or the lower difficulties. Alright, starting out at spot number 6, we have the MG43 Machine Gun Sentry. And this is a machine gun sentry that you get, I think, from level 1 if you want it. It's got the same machine gun on it, like you can drop down. It is a very effective turret. It can take out big crowds. It'll buy you a lot of time, especially in the early difficulties. It'll just clear through all the little guys, just like your machine gun that you would drop would do. But it is pretty much outclassed immediately by the Gatling Sentry when you get it. So it is good, and it has to rank low on this list just because the Gatling Sentry is almost a complete replacement. And other than the ammo usage, there's really no downsides to just upgrading to it as soon as possible. But if you want to use this and the Gatling Sentry at the same time, you could do something like that to make sure you're just super clear of all the little guys. But, you know, just not the best. It's got to be at our number 6 spot. Coming in at our number 5 spot, we've got the Rocket Sentry. This, in the early game, isn't going to be that useful to you. The biggest benefit that this has on the higher difficulties is that it has primary targeting for larger enemies. But in the early game, that's not going to be the most necessary. 3-second call-in time, just like the machine gun sentry. And it is pretty accurate, and the rockets do fly pretty quick, so it can clear stuff. The AoE blast is good. One of the big downsides, though, is the back blast on this thing. You can't stand right behind it, or else it's going to ragdoll you onto the ground. And I think, honestly, without that feature, and if you could use it in tighter situations, not have to worry about the blowback, this would rank a lot higher because the sentry does turn very quick and aim very quick, especially compared to the next one on our list. This is a good heavy target killer, but in the early game you shouldn't have too many heavy targets to deal with, so ranking near the bottom of our list. Alright, coming in at number 4, we have got the Autocannon Sentry. Now the Autocannon Sentry, it's got a lot of pros. It hits hard. The rapid fire rate of it, you know, it can just burn through armored targets. The 3-second call-in time is good, same as the MG and the rockets. Biggest drawback to this one is the turn speed and target acquisition on it is rough. It doesn't have the blowback feature, thankfully, of the rockets, but the slow turn speed and the lack of targeting of heavy targets first. It doesn't prioritize the armor or anything, so it'll just blast all around, and it can blast itself at close range. It'll blast your other turrets, it'll blast your teammates, so definitely something to be careful with. You know, the 3-round burst is going to put out a lot of heat, so probably better if you're attacking like bile titans or tanks, or you need it specifically to blow off armor, but realistically you can get by with like expendable rockets or something to deal with armor in the early difficulties. This can still do it, but it doesn't do the job better than, you know, personal anti-armor weapons. So that's our number 4 slot. Number 3 slot, we have got the Gatling Sentry. Now, you could realistically rank this higher. It is very effective. It completely shreds crowds. I mean, if you have this down, any sort of small approaching group is not even going to be able to advance on it by itself. It's going to completely destroy them. You've got time to reload, you've got time to call in ammo and chill. This thing will take care of small packs for you, no problem. One sticking point with it is it will run through its ammo quick. Unless you've got the ship module that can give you more ammo, which I do not. Down here, shock absorbing gel. Until you have that one, this thing just blends its ammo. The MG is going to stay up longer, for sure, almost every time, but the Gatling damage output is just incredible. Could rank it higher, but 3 is as high as we got to go because the number 1 and 2 spot are just incredible. And at number 2, we have got the Mortar Sentry. Now, the Mortar Sentry only has a 3-second call-in time. I'm just now realizing I think all of these do. And the Mortar Sentry, very effective. I mean, this thing's, the AoE damage that this puts out is unbelievable. Doesn't necessarily punch through armor, but the range and the blast radius of it are just huge. You can just set up on defensive points, set up on objectives, let this thing set right beside a wall or right around a corner, and it'll destroy anything that's coming at it. Small crowds don't have a chance on it. Now, one problem with it, of course, is friendly fire. If you're running in a squad of 4 and you've got enemies even near you, this thing targets those enemies, you're getting hit, because the blast radius and the 3-round burst mortar situation, or I guess 4-round burst, 2 to 4 round burst that it puts out, will just, you know, it's hard to avoid those blasts. And you get ragdolled and take multiple shots, it's probably going to one-shot you, so be careful using this, communicate with your teammates using this, but solo defending a point, it's really hard to beat. It'll take out a lot of enemies before they can even get to you. It's just really hard to combat. Some enemies will charge it if they get close to it, so you do have to defend it. But other than that, it's going to keep you safer than just about anything on this list. That's our number 2 spot. Coming in at our number 1 best turret or sentry for the early game is the EMS Mortar Sentry. Now this sentry pretty much does the same thing that the Mortar Sentry does, except it fires slower, and the shells after they hit have a delayed EMS explosion that just fries and stuns all the enemies around it. You can use this in conjunction with a regular mortar if you want to do even more damage, but it does damage on its own and will kill stuff. It just might take multiple hits. But same benefits as the mortar. You can put it out as line of sight and just sit back on a spot and let it defend. Let it lob shots over. Let the long range alert you to where enemies are coming from. When you see their arcs coming, you can just follow the shots and say, okay, we know we got to defend that side. That's where the mortar's firing. I thought originally this was just going to stun them and not get the kills, but if you let it keep firing, it will get the kills, and it's better on ammo usage than the mortar, it seems like, so very effective. Probably used best in combination with some other sentries to get more damage output, but if you're doing a multi-sentry placement, highly recommend this being one of your picks. I mean, to me it's a must-take in any mission where I know we're going to be defending a point or defending the evac. This one's going to be able to get it done. It does less crazy splash damage, so if your teammates are in the area, they're just going to get hit with that static more than anything, and should result in less team kills because of that. But overall, a great turret. It is the last one you unlock, so it makes sense that it would be good. You know, it's a long way to get there just to use it in early missions, but it's honestly a must unlock once you reach level 20. So overall, that's how I rate the sentries in order of the early game effectiveness. MG being least effective. We'll go in here and look at them again. MG being least effective. You know, they start you out with it. It is very good, but it's outclassed by the Gatling. Next up, number 5 spot, the Rocket. The Rocket would be better if it didn't have the blowback. It does have fast targeting and priority targeting, but in the early difficulties, that's really not enough to push it up the list too much. Autocannon Sentry, pretty good. I don't like the sluggishness. Honestly, the autocannon at number 4 versus the Rocket at 5 could be switched around based on preference. They're very similar, and they're intended to do the same job, but just the safety of using the autocannon and the DPS is a little bit better than the Rocket Sentry in my opinion. Moving up to the number 3 spot, the Gatling Sentry. Great at clearing crowds, gets the job done, will burn through its ammo fast if you don't have the module for it, but overall just a complete upgrade to the Machine Gun Sentry. Definitely a must-take if you're by yourself and dealing with big crowds. Coming at the number 2 spot, we've got the Mortar. Big fan of the Mortar. Does its job well, incredible DPS and a huge area coverage. Great for defending spots. Set up and wait for the evac with one of these down and you're pretty much good to go. EMS Mortar, essentially the same thing. Comes with a little bit of benefits. Con is not as much DPS, Pro is less likely to team kill, and it seems to just freeze and stun lock them hard enough to where it will work better in combination with other turrets. Whereas the mortar, you don't really need it in combination with other turrets, you just want to defend it. The EMS mortar can make your other turrets more effective by just freezing big groups of enemies for you to deal with, or run away from if you need to. So that's my top 6 in order. They'll probably end up releasing more in the future, I would imagine, but that's what it looks like now. We'll take a quick look at these modules that affect them. We have the engineering bay and the robotics workshop. These give you, the engineering bay first one gives you cooldown for dropping it, and then increased health, and then increased deployment time on some of these other minefields and HMG stuff, which is not the turrets. And then in the robotics workshop we have reduced deployment time, which is great. Really need to pick this one up. Shock absorbing gel for the extra ammo, which is awesome. And then sentries rotate towards new targets quickly for the final upgrade. This one's probably great too, especially on the autocannon. Now I'm looking at the, okay, good. It does say that it affects the rocket and the autocannon, the mortar. So this one's probably a great upgrade too. You could get some more usefulness out of your turrets by grabbing these, but overall they still work great without the modules, especially in these early difficulties. Going up to higher difficulties, 5 and 6, you know, it's going to be a little bit different. You probably want some of the more armor-piercing ones, more coordination with your team on how many turrets go down and where. But that's the top 6. Hope it helps you make your choices on which ones you want to grab first.